15 years later, which is crazy to think about, we literally got the film that saved the X Men franchise. In 2011, X Men First Class came out of nowhere and blew audiences away. After the reception of X Men Last Stand and X Men Origins Wolverine, both of them being pretty bad and pretty low on the X Men totem pole as far as the films go, audience's confidence in X Men wasn't particularly good. And then First Class came out and just did the damn thing. And I think that made it work because it kind of focused more on the character and like the ideology more so than like the spectacle that we were getting from X Men 1 and 2, which I love so much still to this day. And it remains actually still one of the strongest X Men entries at this point. And I think what made it work and what still works is Charles and Eric. I think their dynamic is really is the heart of the movie. You know what I mean? It's like Charles, coming out of getting his doctorate, dealing with his relationship with Mystique and all of her issues, and Magneto dealing with his revenge driven, blood boiling warpath that he's on to try to take out Shaw. And then they meet each other and they built the X Men together. They built Cerebro together, which is straight out of the comics, by the way, the building Cerebro together. And McAvoy and Fassbender were the perfect choices to play young Charles and young Magneto. Hands down, they were the perfect choices to kind of come in behind Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and say, check this out, we got this. But it didn't portray them as enemies at the beginning, it portrayed them as friends, which is normal to the comics. They start off as friends and they respect each other, but they just see the world differently. Magneto sees the world as this dark place that can't be helped. Charles sees it as a world that absolutely can be helped. We just got to do it the right way. And Stan Lee's whole intention was that. I mean, he pretty much based them off of Dr. King and Malcolm X, if you really want to be honest. And I think this movie displays that original vision very well, especially between the two. It's a little bit more of an inevitable ending to their friendship, which I think I wish kind of stayed that way in later movies, but the movies always seem to like revive it, then bring it back, then revive it, and bring it back, and it got annoying. But in First Class, it was the right way to go. But my favorite part of the movie is Magneto. Like Michael Fassbender's Magneto is probably one of my favorite things that come out of the X Men franchise in the last 20 years. And that's saying something because Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Ian McKellen's Magneto, Patrick Stewart's Charles, Alan Cumming Nightcrawler. Like there's so many good things about the X Men franchise, but Michael Fassbender just sticks with me still to this day, and it is one of the best performances in a superhero film. I stand by that. Stand 10 toes down. That is. It is driven. He's driven by trauma, anger, and that desire for like justice for mutants, especially for himself. His family was dragged behind those gates, which they actually reshot for First Class. By the way, that wasn't like a archive footage reused thing. They actually reshot the scene the same way for First Class for some reason. And we have to talk about the bar scene in Argentina, right? Like we have to talk about that sequence because that was the scene where I was just kind of like, oh, this movie is cool as hell, and Magneto is wonderful. And it also helped that Michael Fassbender is fluent in German, so he actually spoke the German, and it was legit. And my favorite line in the movie is, "I'm Frankenstein's monster, and I'm looking for my creator." My God, that line made Magneto so bomb in just 2.5 seconds. The scene's already cool, but it ends and it is one of the coolest sequences in one of the X Men movies. And there's some great sequences in all of the X Men movies. Something that also makes it work is that 1960s setting, which is, when X Men debuted in the early 60s, kind of dealing with that Cuban Missile Crisis and giving us that like unique identity of what they're actually dealing with as far as like World War III potentially being on the horizon. And Magneto damn near almost starts at the point. And like it gave the movie like this interesting like spy movie like James Bond feeling in some of the sequences, especially the way the suits were done, the Blackbird and all other things, the way like some of the characters were dressed, the way they found some of them. It just had a nice vibrant 60s feel without going like too heavily in, but giving us a lot of it. the very memorable Kevin. There's so many good things about the movie. Kevin Bacon's Shaw, right? Remember, like the first time we see him, and he like takes that grenade and just like, and just it, nigga. Like, he is, Sebastian Shaw is insanely powerful in the comics, and here in the movie, it is no feat. Like that man is powerful, and even Magneto's having issues beating him. That is accurate because he has one of the coolest sequences in the movie, but he also has one of the worst sequences in the movie, and it's not really because of him. It just Darwin's death is probably the stupidest scene in one of the best X Men movies because and his whole power is that he adapts to survive, and he should have been able to. Like he literally can't die. So it's just. I mean, it was a way to get him out the movie, but I also found out stuff for Darwin that his powers were supposed to be the ones used for Days of Future Past, but since they killed him, they really couldn't. So it's like crap. But a lot of people say like the use of like Havoc, Banshee, and them don't get enough screen time, but I do still remember. I remember thinking like, man, Havoc can't control his powers. Banshee, he's afraid to scream, and I thought those sequences were funny. And then at the end, it kind of comes together. I just think the weird part about the timeline is when Days of Future Past comes around and it makes them connect. But I'm like, by the first X Men, yo, Beast is like 60. Like he's like old, bro, and he's still running around being a beast. Remember, but Nicholas Holt actually does a great job. By the way, like I that was like my first thing I'd ever really seen him in, and I thought he was great. I thought he did a fantastic job. I thought he was a very believable Hank McCoy, but ultimately, I still wish they kind of got someone else. If that makes sense, but I liked him, and yeah, it just is. I guess the other thing that's a little weird to me is the Mystique focus. I mean, in honestly, in the comics, Mystique is dead ass like over 100, and of course they cast Jennifer Lawrence because at the time she was kind of on this projected trajectory to become one of the big it girls at the time, and they're kind of lucky they got her because she definitely did. It was around this point because I think Hunger Games was like that next year over, and then she had DOF, she had X Men First Class. I think Winter's Bone was like her first like Oscar nom the year before that. So Jennifer Lawrence was pretty much destined to blow up, and she just ended up getting X Men, and First Class ended up being good. And next thing you know, Jennifer Lawrence was in everything for about 3 or 4 years, and that was a good time actually. I like Jennifer Lawrence, but I wasn't a big fan of the Mystique thing, and they like I just didn't like the fact like, oh, her and Charles been friends since they was little kids, and she trying to get beat some cheeks, and I was just like, there's a lot going on. Then I guess she ends up giving Magneto the draws, and then she leaves with Magneto because it actually makes sense because it's like the real you. I want to see you. You're who you are. You're blue, and I like that, and I like that Magneto's able to get Mystique to join the Brotherhood pretty much off of that line alone. And that's just kind of it. Like the legacy at First Class, right? Like there's so many cool dynamics going on. The biggest accomplishment is that it launched a very good era for the Fox universe. It saved the X Men franchise because X Men was pretty much doomed after the Last Stand and X Men Origins. But think about it: after First Class, we got X Men First Class, X Men Days of Future Past, Deadpool, Logan, Deadpool 2. We got like a really good stretch of X Men content. It was just, unfortunately, in that mix, we got Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. But those two aside, oh, we also got the Wolverine too, which I think is so underappreciated. I really like the Wolverine. So, it actually kind of fixed the credibility of the X Men franchise in a way that most movies or franchises tend to not get. So First Class is literally like one of my favorite X Men movies for that reason alone. Not my favorite because Logan and X Men Two, and X Men Two is a lot of nostalgia, but also it's still great. And I guess like for me, First Class actually kind of gets like a 9. Like it does straight up get like a 9 out of 10 for me because it is one of the not only is it one of the best X Men movies. I genuinely think X Men First Class is one of the best prequel movies ever done. And that's hard to do. Usually prequels are pretty rough. But, Furiosa is a really good prequel. Um, there's so many other good prequels, but like I'm just going through like best prequels I've ever seen. First Class is honestly one is on that list. It deserves to be on that list because it's a great prequel, and it's just a great X Men movie. And 15 years later, it remains one of the best X Men films ever made, and arguably the strongest franchise reboot of the 2010s. A lot of reboots happened in the 2010s and they didn't quite work, but First Class actually did. There was that emotional core, the performances by McAvoy and Fassbender. You had the Cold War setting. It just did its own thing. It just did its own thing, and honestly, First Class is one of the more elite films of that era. Yeah, I like First Class a lot, actually. But yeah, let me know how you guys feel down below about First Class. Do you still think it holds up 15 years later? Do you think it's the best X-Men movie or one of the best? How do you feel about the performances? You know what I mean? Just let me know how y'all feel down below. Like, comment, subscribe for more. I'll see y'all on the next one.